Hello, this is John with Theology Ed. I hope you're all doing very well today. I am going to record a video here about knowing, and the reason we're going back to knowing, and I'm going to do a significant part of the film, not all of it, but a lot of it. And the reason I'm doing knowing is because there is an important date in it that is coming up, a date that stands out in the film as out of place. It doesn't really belong in the film, and I think it's probably best explained as a case of something clearly put in for the purposes of predictive programming. You know how films that are used for predictive programming often have different layers of meaning. There's sort of the film narrative, and then there's the beyond the film narrative, that is the message they're communicating to viewers who are attentive and understanding what's going on. And sometimes they throw things in that are a bit more explicit than others, and I think in this case it's pretty explicit. Now, knowing, we've talked about knowing on my channels before, and BitChute and YouTube, in a few videos going back a couple of years, 3 years actually, I believe. And one of the things that stands out is that there's been very clear predictive programming in knowing. It has all the signs, that some of the main signs that they use to mark their predictive programming, including clear symbolism of the 2020 annular eclipse followed by the buck moon, and then the subsequent chaos that comes on the world, including the December 14th second 9/11 attack, the sort of that would be the rollout of the therapy on December 14th, 2020, and also the Electoral College vote of Biden. So it has predictive programming about this, and the story itself, knowing, is about knowing the future from dates embedded in code, basically. Okay, and we'll go over that quickly, and then I'll show you this date that's coming up in May, just about a little less than a month from now, and it is very interesting and clear, and you'll see how this looks very much like predictive programming, a clear case fit. So let's take a quick look. Knowing opens like this, and we see the beginning with the word knowing, and what they often do is they eclipse the sun with something other than the moon, and this is their way of hinting at eclipse. And so it begins right away with some of the eclipse symbolism. Now, when we get into knowing itself, the story begins in 1959 with a girl, Lucille, who is hearing whispering sounds in her ears, these voices telling her to write these numbers down. And basically, she's acting insane. And she's writing these numbers down because she had suggested that the class do a one of those, oh man, slipped my mind the name of it. Time capsule, thank you. But I don't know what is going on in my head. I don't know who I'm thanking. I remembered it. But anyways, point being, one of these time capsules, and what she suggests is all the kids would draw a little picture on a piece of paper, they put it in the time capsule, bury the time capsule for 50 years down the road, then people could open it up, and the kids in 2009, 50 years later, would look at the time capsule and the pictures that come out of it and be surprised and amazed and enjoy seeing how much the world is like or dislike the imaginary future of these children in 1959. And so she, instead of drawing a picture like most normal kids, for like a spaceship or something, she writes this number sheet up. And she's writing it intensely, like she's under inspiration of some other source of information, which she was in the film, right? This was one of these aliens was giving her information, the whisperers, they call them. And she writes these numbers down, and she has paper taken from her and put in the time capsule. And 50 years later, a boy is given that sheet when the time capsule is unearthed, and the papers are given to the new class of contemporary children. And this child is the kid, I think his name's Caleb, who is the son of the Nicolas Cage character who's called John in the film. And this boy is right here. He will be also hearing the Whisperers, and he is also going to be one of the very, very few survivors. The alien Whisperers have chosen him to be one of the very few saved on Earth. And interestingly, he is what? He says at the beginning of the film, opens up, I can't consume that, the hot dogs. I've decided to become a vegetarian. So the vegetarian again survives, just like in The Simpsons with the burger squared, the vodka squared. The ones who took that became zombies, but the zombie apocalypse episode, but the ones who didn't were the vegetarians. They didn't become zombies, right? Or in The Kingsman, Viva la vegan. That's the password to save you from the pharmaceutical attack from Poppy, to undo the effects of the pharmaceutical. It's to be a vegan, okay? And she has the meat cuts behind her, and so the vegetarian survives and the meat eater doesn't. It's not actually talking about vegetarianism and consuming meat. On the other hand, it's all symbolic for taking a certain pharmaceutical that derives its name from beef. The Latin for a cow is vacca, and a thing that the pharmaceutical that begins with vac, right? Vac, like that, is a word derived from cow. And so the vegetarian is somebody who doesn't take the vacca. And that's the idea. And so in, what that one Legend of the Ten Rings, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the vegetarian is the one that's going to survive. If you want to destroy the world, and he's interrupted, and the person's beef or vegetarian. They say vegetarian. Oh, that's not an option, and so on. Okay, the symbolism is used in a lot of predictive programming, and the survivors are the vegetarians, the ones who don't take don't consume the vodka. Now, so he's a vegetarian and will be a survivor. The dad, the Nicolas Cage character, takes a look at the number sheet and happens to notice that one of the sequences of numbers is 911012996, and he says, and he looks into it and he says, well, that's 91101. That's the first 9/11 attack, the Twin Towers attack, and he looks it up, and 2996. Well, that's the total dead on the day. And he's like, come on, and he starts to really look carefully at the sheet, and he finds that all over the sheet, from the beginning, it's a chronological ordering of major catastrophes that killed people, plane crashes and terrorist attacks, and all of this that kill large numbers of people. And there's only 3 more dates left. Okay, and the next date that was up was the day after he saw the sheet, and that was going to kill 81 people, and he turns out that he was right there, and he finds out the uncircled numbers on the sheet were locations in the plane crashes right in front of him. He's at the scene of the crash, and 81 people died. And so now he's figured out the pattern on the sheet. It's dates, 9/11/01, total deceased, followed by your coordinates for the location. And that's what the patterns. And he thinks initially the numbers are warnings meant from him because he was at the plane crash, so he was being told to stay safe. So he thought first maybe it was just directed at him. Turns out later he realizes, no, it's for everybody. And it's not even just a warning, right? Because he thinks he's going to go out and try to stop these things from happening. Maybe that's what he's supposed to do. And that doesn't work out. And what he finds out is that there's nothing they can do to stop him. And it's at this point that one of the whispers goes into Caleb's room and gives him the annular eclipse in the window symbol. Okay, you see the annular eclipse symbol. And you go look through it, and that's the moon. What's that moon in the middle that would be doing the obstructing of the sun in the annular eclipse? Well, that would be the moon in June 2000. Okay, so let me review this. So the annular eclipse was the June 21st solstice eclipse of 2020. Very important ritually as a part of their sequence and what's going on. That was a June eclipse in the second half of June, which means the moon that comes out, the next full moon, would be the buck moon. Okay, and so he goes through and he looks through the moon or through the window, and he sees the world burning up, and out comes the stag, right? Just like we've been seeing in other places. This is a very clear bit of predictive programming, a hint that to people who are informed that this film is talking about stuff that is a part of their plans. Anyway, so it continues after that, and we get he's concerned about now the next event, which will kill 170 people. That one is going to be the next day. And so he thinks, oh, he's got to go to New York City to try to stop this. And he puts in effort. He's hunting who he thinks is the guy. Well, it doesn't work out. He's learning that his, basically they're doomed. He can't stop this stuff. And the last one left is 10/19/09. That's a 9/11 if you put the zero, right? And 33, which is written as a backwards EE. And they tell us very clearly that it is an EE, and in fact, it stands for everyone else. EE isn't just one person, it's everyone else. And so now we're getting to the apocalypse, right? We're looking at the next day, basically, is going to be the end of the world. And now he's, confused. Well, what's this all about? We were both wrong. The numbers are a warning, but just not to me or any random group. They're a warning to everyone. He said, I thought there was some purpose to all this. Why did I get this prediction if there's nothing I can do about it? So you see, the idea is that these numbers, their predictions, are inevitable, unchangeable. You can fight them if you want. You cannot change it. What is coming is coming. Okay? Now, and he says, how am I supposed to stop the end of the world? And then this is where it gets very interesting with our date for May. Okay? He calls his dad, who's a pastor, with a prophecy. Now, he's an atheist in the film. He's starting to see purpose with this number sheet, it seems like. So while all this is happening in such a short period of time, it's almost like he's having a worldview shift as well. And he calls his dad, but he says, I have a prophecy. It's about to be proven accurate. I need you to respect it and receive it as the truth. The heat we're experiencing isn't going to get better. I need you to get Mom and Grace and any supplies you can and get below ground tonight, the basement, the sewer, the T. Just get as deep as you can and as fast as you can. And he's like, was that going to save us? He says, I don't know, but we have to try, right? He actually did know. He told somebody else later that the radiation is going to penetrate about a mile deep in the earth and everything's going to die. And so this is an interesting thing. So what is this prophecy? Is it really just a prophecy about the October 19th, 10/19, everybody else dies prediction? Is that what this is? Or is this a part of predictive programming pointing to something else beyond it? Now, this is where we get the new date. Immediately after this scene, what happens is the phones, lose their signal because of the solar flare. Okay, so we lose power here again, which is a very common theme in a lot of these films. So like in Freaky, when she's the girl with the beaver mascot is sitting on the bench for the beaver moon eclipse, which is going to happen at the beaver field. That's the November 2022 eclipse, where she is attacked by the Ladola knife on a pyramid, which emerges for the scene. So the pyramid attack in November being depicted. Right before that, her phone also goes out. and there's an outage, power outage, the lights turn off, her phone disconnects. If you go to Back to the Future, right before the terrorist Volkswagen van drives around the corner, as it approaches him before the attack, the lights in his car go out. He can't get the power on, right? And that was associated with the period that comes on December 4th, 2021 and after. That's the eclipse period that leads to the climactic part of this apocalyptic period. Now, in their view. So what you have is the same thing. Here we have a power outage. Then he goes inside to get Caleb. And what's Caleb doing? Caleb is creating a new number sheet. Now you have to ask the question, how does this fit into the film? Is this actually relevant? It's the end of the world that day. I mean, like that night, it's going to turn to midnight and it's over that day. Okay, so you're on the last 24 hours right here. And he gets a new number sheet? What's the point? This number sheet is being written here and has absolutely no value to the story of the film. Okay, in the film. It does not make sense. He also goes up and he takes the number sheet from the kid as he's writing and takes the pen afterwards. So after he writes at the desk, takes the pen, he's going to write with his fingers. The point is, he stops it. Well, why would he stop it when he knows the number sheets are actually giving important information? Don't you think he'd let it go? This does not fit in the story. What this is all designed to do is put a set of numbers on the desk so that they can show it to us. Right after he says, I have a prediction that's about to be proven accurate. And here it is. What did he write on the desk? There it is. There's your date, just like the number sheet. Here, it even looks like you have an etched in EE. There's your real everybody else. And you get a 445, which I'm not sure if that's what that is, if that's your location. It may be pointing to Philadelphia. That's an area code there. I have no clue what the 445 is. If you have ideas, make comments. This is interesting. But it certainly looks like we have EE or EE, something etched in there as well, if you can see it. I don't know if you can see this very clearly. If not, go look up the film, go to this section. I think it's about 1 hour, I think 27 minutes in roughly. Take a look at the desk and see if you can see it better in high definition. But the point being, here we have a date. What date is that? What year? 23. Day 15, month 5. 15, 5, 23. That is the prediction. Now, what else is this going to mean? Why do they have this in here? It's not a part of the story. They're getting a whole new number sheet with dates when the world ends in 24 hours, and then they never make reference to this again. The rest of the film never comes up. This is gratuitously added to the film, and it only makes sense if you're paying attention. And this scene here, that has a dual meaning. It has a first reference to, in the film, what? The actual solar flare coming on October 19th, 2009. That's what that is about right there in the film. But what's it about for the viewer understanding the predictive programming? He's saying, I have a prophecy that's about to be proven accurate, and then we go get the number sheet that is not meant for the film, has no purpose in the film, but is meant for the viewer who understands, I think, is the idea, and then it goes on and it gives us the date in 2023. Now, what's also interesting about this date is that it falls between April and the end of July, 1st of August or 4th of August, okay, which is the 4-month period of time that corresponds to the dancer when the dancer goes into the bird mask or winged dance. You know, it looks like the death mask. Could be the release of a biological agent, could be the beginning of a new strain or the pi strain or some other strain of COVID after everybody thinks it's all over. It could be the escalation of the war. It could be something like a first strike from the U.S. against Russia, China. Maybe China maybe there's a conflict with China that actually goes live, or in the Middle East that actually escalates significantly at that point. We don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's something to do with domestic civil unrest or attacks and blamed on MAGA supporters or whatever. We don't know. There could be race related as well. We know there are several threads to their whole apocalyptic plan. We've got wars, we've got disease, we've got famine, and food shortages, we've got inflation, we've got economic collapse, we've got de-dollarization. We have a lot of things happening right now, and something is being depicted in that scene in iPad Go 2, the dance with that death mask, that takes off between April and August, I believe, 2023. And I've been talking about that in the videos for a long time. It goes back, I think, when I made that suggestion. I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021, but it's been a while. And we've been following that. It's been accurate so far. What we have here is something to do with NATO, because the NATO symbol on his chest, flying and leading to what comes after that 4-month period, which is when the dancer goes totally nuts and the buildings are falling and the rocks are falling, and we have total chaos until the end, and they've brought in a new world order. Okay, so what we have here is we're in the period, and interestingly, in that period we have a specific date. Now, I also will mention, well, I'll go back to this in a second. We'll go back to Freaky in a second and make an application there. But so he goes, we go on the way to the end of the film, when now we're at almost midnight for the day of the apocalypse. And as we lead up to the apocalyptic stuff, what happens? She goes to get gas, she runs off with his kids, and as she's going to get gas, the director gives us this audio where we can hear what's going on the TV in the gas station. Now, you'd never be able to hear that out here. Okay, so they're letting us hear this for our benefit, again, as a viewer, makes no sense in the film. Okay, so wait right here. Ashley's walking and says, now let's get back to the financial markets, if we may, for a moment. Let's check it out on the grid. Here this morning, we've got treasuries moving up. I'm not sure. No, she's number 5 is the pump. Okay, India is a better bet than the U.S. or Europe, and the dollar will continue its long slide. 20, so something about the money, I guess. This is an emergency broadcast transmission that we get the interruption. So what's happening? As we enter into this emergency, the dollar is sliding. So this is, again, corresponds to what we're saying. As we approach the emergency, the everybody else event, what happens? It's dollar sliding. That's the context. And, it's going to be more devastating than they initially thought. Maybe it's the inflation. Maybe it's the dollar weakening will get worse. Maybe it's the war. We will have to see what it is. Remember, not everything happens in a day usually. Almost never. In fact, the biggest things in the world, if they happen in a year, historically, that's really fast. Like if in a history book in the future, if you can look back at a period of time and say, in 2015, things were, humming along pretty normally. Then there was, 2023, and things have been getting a little worse. And then all of a sudden, by 2025, the world was a totally different place. That's 2 years. For us, that feels like a long time. So is it ever going to happen? It's really slow. But historically, that's like crazy fast for a major change. And so what we're looking at here could be something very big, but it may, again, take a little time from our perspective. And so she goes, and we get her death and so on. And that's where we get the midnight doomsday death of the lady who got hit by that in the car. And there's your 1214. There's your 911. There's Monday, the date of the day of the week. when 12/14/2020 happened, and it almost looks like a Jabco, right? And so we have, this is the rollout date plus the Biden electoral college vote date, 12/14. And we've talked about that before, and that's your second 9/11, I think. And then the film goes on, and the boy is saved with his rabbit in hand. They're scared by the buck and all of that. Now, I want to go back to Freaky and just show you one more thing that's very interesting about this date, how it comes after potentially an important lunar eclipse. When you look in the movie Freaky, of course, Freaky is one of these movies that's important because it comes in this Blum line of the Get Out of the U.S. series. So here, there's the Get Out of the U.S. Films that were produced by Blum, Peel, and McKittrick. And Blum has Get Out of the U.S., and then his next film was You Should Have Left. Why? Because there's a hunt coming. That's the hunt of the conservatives. It's literally, the film is about left-wing hunting the conservatives, or right-wing. It's explicitly political, a very interesting film to watch. And then we get Freaky. Now, Freaky is in this sequence. So this is not an unimportant film for predictive programming, and it ties in very well with the predictive program. We have IPEC 02, where we have the 4 eclipses, and we get to the climactic events after the December 4th, 2021 eclipse and before the 5th eclipse. And it's after 2021, so in 2022, the shot hits the pyramid, the top of the pyramid, in Scorpio. Okay, so that would be late October into November, mostly November. 2022 would be the beginning shot. Now, if you watch Freaky here, here's your beaver after the game. The lights are going to go out, the phone dies, okay? And then she's hunted by the serial killer, goes out, and we have the beaver moon eclipse. See, the moon is suddenly eclipsed right behind him. Then he pulls out the La Dola, sounds like the dollar, knife, and he's going to stab her. And notice the field turns into, in the film, a pyramid. Just like this. The attack at the top of the pyramid with La Dola is going to switch the woke girl and the serial killer man, so that the little girl that's supposed looks so innocent and harmless becomes a serial killer, and the man who, the white middle class American man who looks like the bad guy, but really inwardly is just a nice softy, is going to be hunted like he's the bad guy. In other words, we get to switch the reversal of roles. The middle-class white American guy, who's probably actually the harmless guy in this period in the film, is being hunted down by the left-wing woke folks who are going to come after him. So you get the same sort of thing. But anyways, so this begins in November with an eclipse. But notice it's a total eclipse. It actually totally blacks out the moon here. Total lunar eclipse. The transition does not happen immediately at the time of the stabbing, the first one. See, moon totally blacked out. She gets stabbed, and they begin to transition, but she goes home, takes a bath, she covers her face like he has a mask. It's almost like we're getting a switch right here. Okay, and then she's going to go to bed. But there is another eclipse shown, but it's never total. That's as far as it goes. This is a non-total eclipse, either a partial or penumbral eclipse being represented here. And then the lightning strike lights up the room very briefly. You have to pause the film to see it, and it says end times. When do you enter end times? Not exactly at the November eclipse. That's when it begins. That's where the attack happens, at the top of the pyramid. And remember, the pyramid gets hit, and it takes about 2 to 4 years, 2 to 3 years to fall, for them all to fall. It's a chain reaction, one thing after another, after another, after another, after another. Okay? And then it happens that we get to the end times. Now, when is the subsequent non-total eclipse? Well, there's 2 candidates in 2023. There's a May 5th, 6th, which is just 10 days, 10 days before the May 15th date, which seems to show up in knowing. Okay, so if we get our end times right after that, that'd be interesting, right? That's a penumbral eclipse, so that's not a total eclipse. And then here in October, at the end of October, we have a partial lunar eclipse, which is another candidate. So after one of these eclipses, depending on what type of eclipse you want to say is being depicted here, we get the end time stuff where it gets really bad. All right, now, yeah, and so it takes time for it to come down. So there's the fifth ring, and then well after the fifth ring being out, I believe April 2024, this shot is taken at the United States and wipes it out. So that puts the United States in their planning being destroyed sometime in 2025, 26. Okay, where you get, I think that's when it goes into full blown, probably civil war, probably following a schedule sort of like the Shattered Union trailer. Remember, Shattered Union trailer. 2008, there's a contested election. So if you just switch that to 2020 when the contested election actually happened. So let's just use these dates and see what the schedule would be. Unpopular president elected. Some civil unrest in 2022, shootings and whatnot. Then by sometime in 2023, you start getting more significant domestic terrorism, and Homeland Security declares martial law in some parts of the country. By 2024, before the election, the Supreme Court disqualifies popular candidates from the presidential race. You can totally see Trump being removed from the ballot in some states by the courts because of his indictment and all of that. Imagine if he's the front runner leading Biden and is removed by courts from the ballot, and Biden ends up winning again, just how much of a disturbance that would cause. Then we go to the election. The unpopular president wins a second term. Then there's a nuclear terrorist attack at the inauguration in 2025, sinking the federal government basically, and leading to states seceding. And then an actual civil war, full-blown, in 2026. That would be roughly the predictive programming from Shattered Union, if that's what it is. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's the schedule, and it's not going to be exactly like that. But the shot being taken at the U.S. behind Ra Horkut here, happening in 2025-26, does actually match up pretty well with that. So there you have it. What we have, I think, to watch for, is this date. May 15th, 2023. I'm not saying something major is going to happen on the date. If you followed my channel long enough, how I operate and how I think through these things, things don't happen in a day. They just don't. It takes time. But the date could be something very big. We are entering the phase where we're getting close to the very, very big stuff. I think IPEC-02 is very clear about that. At least that's their plans. I'm not saying IPEC-02 is prophecy. Don't get me. I think that's nuts. And I think their plan, we know their plan, whatever their plan is, biblically, what does Jesus say? Their plan is probably going to be almost extinction level stuff. And for the elect's sake, Jesus will cut it short. God was going to cut it short. So I would not be surprised if their plan takes you through 2024, 25, 26, but God cuts it short in 2023 or 2024, something like that, in some unexpected event for them. So at some point here, the plan is derailed by God before it happens, before it's fulfilled. And that gives us hope, that gives us confidence. We don't need to be afraid. Okay? But we know their plan is derailed at some point and cut short. So when I say this is their plan, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I think at some point God actually stops it. And that's a good thing. So we're going to pray for that, wait for that, watch for it with faith and confidence, and be sure that the Word of God is much more sure and certain than any foolish ritual magic of a bunch of pagans who are serving the enemy of God. And so we don't need to be afraid. However, this date is a date to watch because it certainly seems like they have it in mind for something important. So there you go. All right, like, subscribe, share, and thank you for watching, and welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate it. I know I took a long time off, a lot of stuff going on, and I appreciate your prayers. Okay, blessings.